In this video, we're going to cover how to set up your Scanfile and Jobfile for second-level analysis using the methods core scripts. Together with the template script shown here, this is what we set up last time. The Scanfile and Jobfile contain all necessary information for running any second-level models in SPM. The Scanfile contains information about the subjects in your analysis, things like their folder, what group they belong to, and values for possible covariates. The job file contains information about the different models that you want to run at the second level and references columns from the scan file. We're going to continue with the same example we were setting up in the template, just to familiarize ourselves with how the data is set up. Here's the first level folder. So I have a number of subjects, patients and controls, denoted by P and C, and they were each scanned at 2 time points, so each subject has 2 scan folders. And then inside those folders they have an EFAT folder with different contrast images. The task that we're doing has 3 different emotional conditions: angry faces, fearful faces, and happy faces. For now, the contrast images that we're interested in are images 2, 3, and 4. These represent angry, fearful, and happy faces respectively versus a baseline control task. So let's take a look at the scan file. The first 2 rows of the scan file contain header information. The first row has a fixed set of words that it can be, and it determines the data that is held in that column. It can be either path, which indicates a subject folder or path name. It can be factor, which indicates it contains a grouping variable. Or it can be COV, which indicates that it contains covariate values. The second header row is available for you to enter descriptive information about the contents of that column. After that, each row contains information about a single subject. So here we have 6 subjects, 3 controls, 3 patients. We can also see here that we have 2 path columns pointing to the scan 1 and scan 2 for our patients and controls. Then we have a factor column for patients. This contains 0s and 1s. 0s will be excluded subjects from that analysis. Obviously, we don't want to include the controls when we're looking at patients. 1s are patients. We similarly have a factor for controls, which is just 0s and 1s flipped. We then have a factor which contains 1s and 2s. This is patients versus controls. This will be used in any group comparisons that we're doing. We have another factor column here. In this case, it contains, say, genotype data, but it can be, any factor. So again, we have 1s and 2s here. We could also have 0s if there were excluded subjects. After this, we have several covariate columns, just containing some covariates that we might want to use in our analysis. Age, and then some pre-post measure, in this case, state trait anxiety. So that's all there is to a simple scan file. Your specific scan file for your analysis may end up having fewer columns for simpler designs, or it may have many more columns when there's a lot of different groups or covariates to consider. The scan file is general, and it can be used for different analyses, since the actual models we run are defined in the job file. So now we're going to take a look at the job file. The sample job file that comes with a methods core repository contains a single example of each possible model type that can be run. They include 1 sample t-test, 2 sample t-tests, paired t-tests, multiple regression models, a full factorial or between group ANOVA, and a flexible factorial or repeated measures ANOVA. The job file contains a header row. Here, the header names should not be edited or moved around. They indicate to the script what data is contained in that column, and the order of the columns is important. So don't move them around. After the header row, each additional row contains information about a single second-level model to run. The first column can be either a 0 or a 1 and just indicates whether you want to run that model or not. This allows you to fill out information on many models, but then only run a subset of them if necessary. For example, if one of your subject group changes, you might need to rerun some of the models, but not all of them. The type column indicates what type of model it is. It can be a 1 through 6, corresponding to 1 sample, 2 sample, paired, multiple regression, full factorial, and flexible factorial ANOVA. Output name contains the name of the folder to place the model in. This is going to end up being a subfolder under the output template that you set up in your script template. So here it's experiment second level. That's going to create a number of subfolders based on the output names here. PathCol refers to the column in the Scanfile that contains the subject folders to use for this model. In some model types, paired and flexible factorial, this can contain more than one value. ImCol refers to the contrast image number for normal use, or the image column that contains the number in advanced use. This is the number for the contrast images to use for that model. In some models, this can contain more than one value. Within names is only going to be used for flexible factorial models, so we'll discuss it more in that video. Between name is the name for your grouping variable. The name here really doesn't matter, it's just for your information. The column after this, col, contains the column number from the scan file that contains your grouping variable. There's always going to be 3 sets of these pairs of between name and col, because you can create up to 3 factors. Generally, you may only be using 1 for a lot of 1 and 2 sample t-tests and stuff. Really, you're only going to be using more than 1 if you're doing full factorial ANOVAs. After this, you can add any number of covariates by using pairs of covname and col columns, indicating the name of the covariate and the column from the scan file that contains the values. For a paired t-test, model type 3, you need to provide 2 numbers in the column for column numbers of the covariates. That covers the basic structure of the Scanfile and Jobfile. In the next video, we'll move on to some practical demonstrations running t-tests.